Get ready, Ohio. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Buckeye State. And to kick things off, you can get started with $100 in free bets as an early sign-up bonus. Just download FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. Make every moment more with FanDuel. 21 plus and present in Ohio. Bonus issued and non-withdrawable free bets that expire 30 days after FanDuel accepts its first real money sports wager in Ohio. Go live date. Unique user identity verification required. Offer ends on the go live date. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Today we are talking to JT Frank. JT is a friend of mine from Athletic Brewing. He's one of our ambassadors. He's obviously so much more than that, but he's also an ambassador in the program. And by the way, it is the 26th of December. Merry Christmas to everyone that celebrated it yesterday. If you don't celebrate Christmas, happy, whatever you celebrate. If you don't celebrate anything, well, I hope you had a great day yesterday. But today is the day after Christmas, and we're talking to JT Frank because this episode is interesting. JT hosts a podcast and owns a nonprofit with the same name called The Consequence of Habit. And it's all about helping people build healthy habits because essentially habits are your life. One of my biggest habits is getting up and making coffee every day. It's a big part of my life. Doing the same things, those accumulation of habits become essentially who we are, and it can go good and it can be bad. There's plenty of bad habits out there. And with the new year coming up, I know a lot of us are thinking about maybe the next adventure we want to go on or what kind of habits we want to build into this year or what kind of changes we want to make. And I figured this would just be a really good conversation, low-key conversation about JT's journey, how he got to this point, how he started this nonprofit, and the power of different kinds of habits and how to have better habits. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. This is, by the way, a conversation from my other podcast through Athletic Brewing called Without Compromise. Athletic Brewing is my day job, non-alcoholic craft beer. Great people there. We get a lot of guests that kind of are on both shows. And yeah, if you're not, a part of it already, we are doing a thing called Give Dry a Try, where you don't drink alcohol for the month of January. A lot of people do it naturally. It's often called Dry January. If you want to give it a shot, let me know. I'm going to be doing it. I do that every January and every October just to give my body a break from any alcohol I drink and just to start the year off on a good foot, right foot. So cheers to a new year. Cheers to a Merry Christmas or whatever you celebrate. And yeah, let's hear this conversation. All right, folks. Today we are talking to JT Frank, a long-standing Athletic Brewing ambassador. I didn't even look up the date that you got brought on the team, but it's been since I can remember. I don't have the longest memory though, Case. But do you know when you were brought on the team?
No. It's been a couple of years. My relationship with Athletic spans probably about 3 years, 3.5 years. Pretty soon after I quit drinking, and back then I could text Bill. And this is the type of growth you guys have had, but back then, the actual ambassador, it's probably been about 2.5, 3 years.
Where did you grow up? Where's home for you? And take us through your introduction into the military.
Yeah, so I grew up most of my life in New York, not in the city, about an hour outside the city, in a place called Orange County, New York, town of Middletown, and in high school, I moved up to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania, and that's where I graduated high school. I started college in Scranton, Pennsylvania for a little bit, and I quickly realized that I was not ready to be on my own in college. So that was short lived. I didn't do a whole lot of schooling. I was just working at bike shops and just partying a lot. I knew something had changed my life. So I one day just went down to the recruiter and was exploring it. And both my father and my grandfather were military, and I just started. I think before I knew it, it wasn't, a lot of people, they talk about this patriotic reason that they joined. And that's not necessarily my story. But it was a way to do something for at least 4 years of my life and look like I'm making some type of forward progress. So yeah, it was in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I enlisted in the Air Force. So this is going back. We're going back to 95.
So what were those first 4 years like? It led to more, like an entire career. But what were some of those early years? What were you learning about the military and the life of being in this world?
I've said it before, Mason. I don't know if saying it saved my life is probably a bit of an overstatement. But you come to crossroads in your life, and you either go left or right, and that just happened to be by chance. I went in that direction, and it was everything that I needed. Not just during that time. I was in for 5 years. I get out, and again, I quickly realized that I need certain things in my life. But at that point in my life, I needed structure. I needed to be held accountable. I'm ADHD and a late bloomer, right? So you add those two things, and I think my prefrontal cortex is that of right now like a 25-year-old. I'm 47, so I was behind the curve. So it was exactly right, and I excelled. I did really well in the military. I in those environments, I do well. It was just at that time I found if I was left on my own, that I was on the opposite. I tended to self-destruct. So military taught me discipline. It taught me, again, how not just to hold other people accountable, but hold myself accountable. I forgot that lesson a couple of times throughout my life, but I'll say this. One thing that's great about the military is in the world of, in society, we separate each other for whatever, whether that's our tax bracket, the color of our skin, our sexual orientation, all of these different things. The military is a great way of bringing people together and having a shared goal. And you have no choice but to interact with people that you are not necessarily used to being around. And I think it was really helpful in developing just ways to communicate with people and get along with people. And those are skills that I think I carry for the rest of my life so far.
Was that hard to replicate on the outside? Just having that shared goal. I mean, it seems to be a common thing that a lot of veterans go through, is like just replicating the purpose of the lifestyle into civilian life.
I completely self-destructed. Like, it was a train wreck when I got out. I mean, I got out and I thought I had it all figured out, right? That was part of the problem of being in this system and then doing really well in this system, and then confusing myself with, I've got all this life thing kind of figured out, and then being kind of just, I'm going to say left on my own, because I'm the one who decided to get out, but just getting out, not having a purpose, not having the camaraderie, not having the accountability. And I was living out in Sacramento, California. I moved to just north of Sacramento in a town called Auburn. And yeah, it wasn't pretty. Yeah, it was a really tough time. I call it my vision quest. That was my year of kind of what I consider rock bottom in a lot of different ways. And it led to me literally, Mason, I'm not joking, selling pretty much everything I had at a pawn shop and loading everything I could into a Jeep Wrangler. I sold my back seats, Mason. That's how bad it was. I sold the back seats. My Jeep Wrangler, loaded everything into it, and
those are not known for having a lot of storage, by the way.
No. This isn't. This is like a 1995 Jeep Wrangler. Got my dog in there and a bunch of stuff, and headed out of town, and drove across. Went from Sacramento to near Scranton, PA. So yeah. So it taught me a lot, but it also, like I said, there's a harsh reality of getting out and then really struggling with that and finding myself over a period of time needing that structure again in my life. And that led into me being a forest ranger and different aspects of being a first responder, working for the government and And that's where I find myself today.
You know, I know the pay is a little different, but it reminds me of the stories of professional athletes when they get out of the, you go from a stadium filled with 60,000 people cheering for you to, you're just a normal person now. Now you have this legacy and you have the remnants of it in your home a lot of times, but you can't replicate that, the locker room, the coming out on the field and all that. And I'm sure besides the pay, like I said, it's very similar to the military in the sense of purpose and goal.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself like at a bar, like, I've been out for 8 months and I was like Uncle Rico of just reminiscing about my time. And to be honest with you, my time it's very hard to even compare to the people that serve now. Listen, I got out in 2000. The world was, pre 9/11 military is another animal, right? So I look back and go, boy, I sure had it good. Like I think about all the experiences, man. I traveled the world. I hiked mountains in Turkey. I did amazing things. And sometimes you just don't realize what you have, which especially at that age, right? The grass is always greener. I'm going, man, this sucks. And in retrospect, I look back and even on my bad assignments, they are some of the most cherished memories I have for sure.
Wow. Rock bottom, driving across the country in your Jeep and your dog. When did it start to turn around? When did you start to feel that you had that purpose back? And tell us this too, because I feel there's a lot of people probably maybe in a lesser way sensing that, maybe in a similar way. Was it immediate or was it a slow progression back to a stable life?
Oh no. So it started with my now wife, right? So I started dating my now wife, and she had a child who's now my daughter as well, and that that purpose of living for something other than yourself, that's something I kind of needed as well. And no, this progression. First of all, I want to say I don't have it figured out, but the progression of change is been extremely slow. We on my podcast, I talk a lot about alcohol and that transformation didn't happen until 2019. Right. So now I was married in 2003. So there were certain positive aspects of my life that kept me grounded, but realizing that positive change needed to be made in my life, that's a slow journey that we're, still working on today.
I've told this story before, but my dad was a heavy drinker when right before I was born. And I don't know if I've actually told the story on the podcast, but my dad found out that my mom was pregnant with me and he had a beer in his hand and he was an alcoholic. And he goes, oh my gosh, I got to get my life together. They're young. They're super like 20, 21. And he's like, I can't be living like this and have a kid. So he had a beer in his hand. He set it down on a payphone, never touched alcohol again, but he loved beer. So he drank non-alcoholic beer my whole life. So when the opportunity with Athletic came along, it was like, oh yeah, I know about this idea. There's been O'Doul's in my fridge for 30 years, so, or not my fridge, but my dad's fridge. It's always in the truck. Because he'd just keep it in the back of the truck for work, and you could drink it at work. And so it's always been around. And so what's cool is that, I have brothers with medical issues. My dad doesn't drink, and I still enjoy beer. But it's something we can all have together, and no one has to worry about anything. But for him, it was a moment. It was a moment he was like, it's over. I can't do this ever again. And he hasn't. What was it like for you?
It wasn't one thing. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and most people who have an issue, and this doesn't have to be alcohol, this could literally be anything. And I think that's something I'd like to just dive into after this. But, if I was honest with myself, I'm like, I knew the way I did things. I drink more than most people do. And that doesn't fit into a regular, I should say not regular, because that's a bad word. The traditional thing that we think of somebody with a drinking problem, right? You didn't see me slurring. I didn't have a DUI, and that's probably more luck than anything. But I knew deep down that that I drank too much. And even going back to kids, like I grew up in a house that drank. Like that was the norm. I saw it every single day. And that was reinforced with the military. And that's one of the things I'm passionate about talking about is as great as the military is, as many great habits you will learn, there's some that maybe don't serve people long term. But I would, if I spent more than 2 seconds thinking about that, I was teaching my kids the same thing that I was taught, right? This blueprint of how to be an adult, that I wouldn't think about too long because that stung too much, right? And I found that I just made these decisions throughout my life. Like every major bad decision, I was tracing back to this thing. I was like, I've run this experiment a lot of times, and the outcome seems to hold true almost every time. So I tried it more than once, but there was just one time that I was coming home on from a work trip, and I said, "That's it." That was February 3rd of 2019, and that was the last time I had a drink, and yeah.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible.
Get ready, Ohio. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Buckeye State. And to kick things off, you can get started with $100 in free bets as an early sign-up bonus. Just download FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. Make every moment more with FanDuel. 21 plus and present in Ohio. Bonus issued and non-withdrawable free bets that expire 30 days after FanDuel accepts its first real money sports wager in Ohio. Go live date. Unique user identity verification required. Offer ends on the go live date. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode. It seems like so many things was attached to that, to where it's like when that domino fell, in the sense of like personal progress, all these other dominoes started falling too. You find that a lot with like, I got a lot I need to change about my life, or a lot that I want to change, but it's really overwhelming to think about doing it all at once. But if you find that one thing that everything's really, really attached to, or at least connected to in a way, you can get a lot done just eliminating that one step. So it sounds like that was for you, the big thing you needed to focus on.
Yeah, it was. And then it was also, the further you make distance from something like that, the more you start to realize you can pinpoint, or at least spot the reasons you start doing stuff. You start examining, and we don't have to get into like what a 12 step, but it's something that probably everyone should go through, because you start realizing like, hey, I look at my phone more when I'm uncomfortable, or I have more road rage when I had a crappy day at work, or whatever. And you start to connect these things. And that's where this kind of idea of examining our habits, looking at the things we do on a daily basis and going, hey, is this something that's bringing me closer to this version of myself that I like, or is it the opposite? Because, something I talked about even with the alcohol is like, we have this vision of ourselves as what we think we are portraying, or even what we're putting out to the world, but they don't always fall in line with the reality of how we're feeling. Right. So, trying to make those two align as much as possible is probably, have been a helpful exercise, and I think that's been part of this process. Yeah, but to answer the question, yes, that was the first step, and then from that, a lot of things have just kind of come along with it.
That's awesome, man. You've mentioned it a few times, and people heard about it in the intro, but consequence of habit. That's kind of your whole thing, your podcast, nonprofit. It's a giant metal sign that's behind you right now on the wall. That's really cool. I think like a listener made that for you. Looks awesome. I've got a couple things. I've got a t-shirt with it. Oh, I should have worn the t-shirt today. I could lie and say it's underneath its jacket, but it's not. It's another Athletic Bruin shirt. But tell us about that idea, because it started with the phrase first. When did you just start seeing the pattern of the consequence of habit, which is a long-term thing, just like you were talking about before?
Yeah. All right. So to back up, I'd been doing a podcast for a beverage company called Killcliff, and it's kind of in the CrossFit world, and fantastic company. They were great to me. They helped me set up this studio that I'm in now. And, but then COVID happened. This kind of fell through, and there's a lot of people kind of, I'm not saying anything that people don't know, but COVID was tough on people. And there's a lot of people within drinking that were kind of suffering through those during that time. And I wasn't working a bunch just because of the pandemic. And I had this studio and I'm like, man, I'm just going to talk about like our habits and the consequences, because I've felt both sides of it. And that's something we don't think about that much. You don't think about the positive consequences of our habits. So I just got on the mic and I started this project, and I came up with the name Consequence of Habit. And I quickly found out that I ran out of material to talk. I mean, I can only talk about nobody wants to hear, one person's story too much. So I had a couple just kind of intros on my story. And then I just started sending out messages to other people, fully expecting all of them to say no. And gradually more and more people started saying yes. And I didn't want it to be just about drinking, because I think what talking about habits does is it levels the playing field really for everyone. Because I don't care if it's you're this high functioning entrepreneur that gets up at 4, does their 100 burpees, meditates, journals, or you're a person that's suffering with alcohol or drug misuse issue. We all share this thing, this habit. Habit's like the most woke thing in the world, right? Like it doesn't care where you're from, color, any of these things, right? So, and people would just tell me about their journey, and I would have some people that had these great habits from the time they were young, and they're doing unbelievable things, and then I had other people that were on the verge of death, and then have gone on to start examining their habits, make these positive changes, and are doing just unbelievable things. So it quickly became bigger than me, and it was more of a platform for people to come on and tell their stories, and then hopefully inspire some other people to make some changes in their own life. About a year into that, we wanted to do more, because these episodes were like, I just didn't want to point people to an episode of a podcast. As great as that was, I felt like we could have more impact, and that's where we looked at COH as a nonprofit and started that process with the goal of just having these workshops. And that's what we're doing now. Whenever we can, we have workshops where we bring in either practitioners or experts in a particular habit, and we make it pretty much free to charge of people. And we go after certain audiences, but free of charge for people to sign up and come in. Like 2 weeks ago, we did a Wim Hof breath work and cold exposure workshop, where this one was for veterans. They came in and these are things that veterans aren't necessarily, not all of them, but not necessarily accustomed to doing, right? Like getting an ice bath and hyperventilating and thinking about, mindfulness and meditation and all of these different things. And so that's been an amazing experience. And to give both Athletic and you a shout out, without you guys, a lot of this stuff wouldn't be happening. I mean, I've said it on our podcast every episode, but you guys have been just such a huge supporter of us, and can't thank you enough.
You didn't have to say that. I'll probably cut that. No, I'm just
Don't.
No, man. Well, it's so cool to see you start off with an idea, go with it, build on it. I mean, you've got a family, you've got 3 kids, a wife, a full-time career, and doing this on the side and starting this nonprofit. It's really inspiring. It's really awesome. Like, I get a lot of personal inspiration from, like, man, if JT can find the time to do this stuff, surely I can find the time to do these things I want to do. What have you seen in the veteran community, society do well for veterans and not so well?
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. I mentioned connecting our actions with our emotions, right? And that's, like I said, like you're having road rage because you had a bad day at work or something along those lines. I think as far as the community, one thing I remind the community, and this wasn't my experience, but that men and women, we've been at war for over 20 years now. And there's men and women that have seen things and experienced things that as humans, we are not designed to process. And some people process them better than others. And I make the comparison to like altitude sickness and dealing with trauma, right? So everyone has a different threshold. Some people can walk up, they can acclimate to high altitudes much quicker and not have the same effects. It's got nothing to do with toughness, and it's just the way they're biologically made, where other people have a lower threshold to that. And trauma is the same way. So the problem with people suffering is that we don't always make those connections, because the way they act out a lot of times are in an interpersonal relationship, or you see them act out in a way that's it's very hard to make those connections. Like maybe somebody's really suffering. I would say that just having some empathy and understanding that what a lot of these men and women have gone through is beyond what most people are designed to be able to go through. The second part of that is, I would say that, and this is happening, but the VA was doing the best that they could to take care of people, but those treatments, it's the government, and they've done some amazing things, but we're constantly coming up with different ways to treat people for any issue dealing with mental health, and I look forward to different ways of doing things that maybe weren't traditionally used, coming to the forefront and giving some people some more relief. Because I just talked to a guy yesterday, and there's a lot of people really struggling out there, and then trying to integrate into the civilian side and make that work has been a really uphill battle for a lot of people. So
with the show, and taking it beyond that to do like actionable things people can get involved in. What's on your roadmap? What are you trying to do here with Consequence of Habit? Where is it going for you? Like what are you trying to do in the long run?
First of all, I'll start off with our mission statement. Our mission is to bring awareness to the impact that habits have on our mental health, our success, and the environment. The bread and butter for us are these workshops. We have an ambassador program now, and this is a great way to spread the word. We have 21 people that are living the mission, right? They are people that through their everyday actions are bringing awareness to the impact that habits have on their own life and inspiring others at the same time. We have the podcast, and that's, again, a platform for other people to tell their stories. But all of this is a way to funnel attention towards us as a 501c3. And our goal is to have more workshops, to do this in more than just. So a lot of these things right now have been based out of the Philadelphia, Delaware area, but we now have ambassadors all over the country. And I would like to see, we will have these opportunities for people to attend these things and across the country. This is. We're sympathetic to the first responder in the military community, because that's where I come from, but that's not all. We're doing work with other nonprofits. We're working on something with the Phoenix, some other recovery groups. Or just anybody. I mean, I think one of the opportunities here about talking about habits is that the more we talk about it, the more we realize how much they dictate everything in our life. Like, the richest countries in the world have the highest levels of mental health issues, the highest levels of depression, suicide, substance misuse issues, anxiety, pain. And there's a reason behind that. And a lot of it is just what we're doing on a regular daily basis, this idea of always being comfortable, this idea of not challenging ourselves. There's a lot to it. And I just foresee COH as kind of a catalyst to bring awareness to that, and hopefully just have a community of people kind of coming together, have this connection through a shared experience and challenge. So it's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, Mason.
Just don't do it again. Tell me a story about somebody who either through the show or just through some of the work you're doing changed a habit, and what happened. Like, what was the habit they changed, and what was the consequence of it?
Every time that this seems to be too much, where I'm going, oh, man, this is so time consuming.
You talk about running the nonprofit, hosting the show. I know you've got like adult and teenage kids.
Right. You got a full-time job. It's a lot going on, right? So every time that it gets to the point where I'm going, I don't know if the ROI on this is is it worth it? Is it? And then all of a sudden I'll get an email, and this has happened multiple times where they said, hey, you had so-and-so on. They said, they described exactly what I'm lived through or have experienced. And can you please put me in touch with this person? And And I say, no, I'm joking. I say, of course. I go, yeah, and I'll make these connections, and to just be the middle person on that and see these interactions go back and forth has made this one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done in my life, 100%. And I don't think I could have continued and will continue. Like, this is going to be my full-time job. I mean, I retire from my 9-to-5 job in about 3.5, 4 years, and this will be my full-time job. And I will see this through and see it grow. And I mean, it's already become bigger than me, but just even be part of it. So I didn't really answer the question on a specific habit. There's been a lot of people will reach out. Hey, I've gotten into journaling. I've gotten into breath work, but a lot of times I feel like an imposter, or, I have imposter syndrome, because I'm going, man, a lot of these people, they have such better habits than I do. I'm like, they should be doing this. They should be running this for sure.
The author Ryan Holiday that wrote, Ryan Holiday, Stoicism.
It's a big part of this is the idea of the obstacle is the way.
Yeah, the obstacle is the way. Well, I was listening to a podcast he was on, and him and his wife joke a lot that one of them is a Stoic, the other one writes about Stoicism. And the joke is, he goes, she's actually living it. She's the one that it just comes natural. That's her demeanor, her personality. She has that resilience and that mindset. He's the one that's almost super fascinated by it because it's a whole lot of work for him. It's almost like the less talented athlete makes a better coach, because they've had to learn all those things themselves. So they know what it's like to get there, versus someone like a Michael Jordan, where it's like, what do you mean? You can't do this. It comes natural. So it's almost better that you're someone that's learning it and has to go through it and isn't the best. It helps you teach it better.
100%. And I wanted this to be like this. I wanted things to be happening in real time. Like, I want to see, so we're getting ready to have somebody come on and talk about like our relationship with technology. I struggle with my relationship with technology. And to go through these things in real time. And then we're getting ready to do our second digital fast, right? So for 30 days, we're going to try and we're going to get rid of all of these things that kind of just monopolize our time. And I'm nervous. Because this one's going to hit me hard. Like, this is going to be the exact kind of stuff that I know I'm going to struggle with. So I never wanted to come at this from the point of view, like, hey, I got this thing figured out. I got this thing licked, and I'm going to instill my wisdom on you. All of this is playing out for me just as much as it is everyone else. And like I said, there are a lot of the people that have buy-in on this, way more in touch with like the way habits affect their life. I say to my wife before, I'm like, I'm just, and in certain things, like we have this, and this probably comes over from the athletic brewing side too. Is like, we have amazing ultra running athletes. I'm not an ultra runner. I mean, I run, but I'm not an ultra runner. But I have these people that are part of this thing that inspire me way more than I know. It's on the flip side. I don't even know where I'm going with that. I get what Ryan Holiday's saying for sure, though.
I look at the ambassadors and think, I think I do something when I go for like a 3-mile walk around my neighborhood, or like I hiked last night and it's flat, it's Florida, I'm walking around in the woods. It's the middle of the night though. And so I'm like, all right, doing something here. And I look at my phone, technology, see the ambassador group, and someone ran like 200 miles and climbed like 500,000 feet of elevation. And I'm like, okay, maybe what am I doing here? Why am I the one that's supposed to be encouraging this community to be active and live this lifestyle?
Yeah, but again, it's bigger than us, right? Like that group that Athletic has built, and there are so many things that I've mirrored or tried to on the way that you guys have done things. Listen, Mason, I'm gonna put it out there. You're the first person I called when we talked about our ambassador program, right? Like I was in a hotel somewhere, and you were talking to me about the ambassador program and how Athletic does things. And you guys been amazing about building this community. And you see them. I mean, people are interacting. I think it's an awesome thing. I mean, this isn't just an athletic hype thing, but it's been a big part of my process, both personally and COH wise. So I get what you're saying. listen, Taylor Spike, he runs like the Cocodona 250.
Remember that episode?
And he wears COH stuff all the time. So I'm like, man, I don't even know what we do to deserve that. Like that's cool.
We do a rapid fire segment, and I kind of have a long list for you because there's a few extra things I want to know. You want to jump into that?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. And some of it's going to have to do with podcasting because, two podcasters get together. We got to talk shop a little bit. But, you've had a lot of awesome guests on Consequence of Habit. Who has been maybe one of the most memorable recently, or someone that just quickly comes to mind? People ask me the question all the time for mine. It always changes. It just kind of depends on recent guests, what I've been thinking about lately. What's been something that really got you recently, and why? Who was it? What were they talking about? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
The one that always stands out is I had a conversation with General Greg Martin, who was the president of the National Defense University. And he told a story of being called into his boss and his boss's office. And I want to say his boss was like, I might be screwing this up, but I think it was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And he was suffering with some mental illness and didn't know it. And his boss said to him, says, Greg, I love you like a brother, but you got to retire. You have to leave today or you're fired. And I think that one really stands out to me because this is a 2-star general talking to a guy who was a low ranking. Like I got out at a low rank and exposing some vulnerabilities to me, also a stranger, and hence to the world of one of the most traumatic, difficult things in his life. And I found that so incredibly brave of somebody who's looked at in a certain way for his entire career. We're talking about a West Point graduate. We're talking about just somebody groomed to be a leader, and then willing to open up about their own experiences. And then other than that, Taylor Spike's episode, again, that was one of the very first episodes, and it was so heavy. I mean, I joked with him afterwards. I'm like, man, I think I need a nap. Like I got done with it and I was like, it was just, but I mean, I had Greg LeMond on. I'm a cycling fan. I had Greg freaking LeMond on I had a poster of that dude in my room when I was a kid. So there's tons of them that I look back and go, I can't believe that person said yes. And then even more importantly, I can't believe the relationships, the people that I continue to talk to on a regular basis after having him on the podcast. And I'm sure it's something I had you on the podcast, and just a couple of months ago, we were sitting around having a cold one together down in Florida. So
that's right. Non-alcoholic,
yes.
Of course. But yeah, we went and got some pizza. You were in town. That's so crazy. I know everyone and their mom has a podcast, it seems like, but there's a reason. There is very few mediums in today's world we could talk halfway across the country from one another, have an in-depth conversation about our feelings, about what motivates us, about how our lives have changed. You walk away from these conversations, you feel connected to people. You feel like friends because there was no medium in a lot of ways before this to open up that quickly to someone you didn't know that was intended to then be shared with the world. It's a really fascinating medium.
It really is. And I've had NA beers with people, like I've been on work trips and I've met up with people that I've had on the podcast, and it really is an amazing experience. It's sometimes, I forget what the number of people that you can really only be close with. It's like I don't know, 150. So I get that some of those relationships fall away, but it has definitely opened up that pool of 150 to people I never would have thought I would be talking to. So, it's been a pretty cool experience.
It's called Dunbar's number, by the way. It has to do with like the max number of people you can have a relationship with. But yeah, I guess scientists call it Dunbar. We've actually brought it up with building the ambassador program. Like, do we need to branch off every 150 or something? And there's a lot of organizations that use that number to say certain branches or arms can't get bigger than that, because then you just don't know people. I think it's true. All right, so that was first one. So, all right, you've had a ton of people on, been some impactful people. What is your favorite daily habit?
I don't do it as much as I should. I did it right before we get on the podcast. Is breathwork stuff. I do like a Wim Hof breath work. I'll do a couple sessions of that. And that has been something that for me to find stillness in my mind, because it's all over the place most of the time. To find some stillness, I will do a couple rounds of some breath work and feel grounded. Everything seems to slow down a little bit, and that kind of gets me in the right mindset for the most part.
I've been breathing my whole life. Heck, I've been doing it the whole time we've been talking.
You're multitasking. It's unreal.
No, I know what you mean, though. Do you have any hobbies that you don't often talk about or folks don't know about?
Yeah, I don't talk too much about my own stuff. I love climbing. I bring my daughter climbs with me. Well, both my daughter and my son. So I live in Delaware, so we're not doing any multi-pitch big mountain stuff. It's all in a gym. But we love the climbing. I grew up as a cyclist. I don't know if I fall into that category anymore, but I love mountain biking. I grew up racing road bikes. Listen, my dog's name is Merckx after Eddie Merckx. My son's name is Cadell after Cadell Evans. Or I should say we just like the name. It's not after him, but that's weird. But yeah, so I love cycling. Just fitness stuff, man. So if it's trail running, I'm still coming on back from an injury on that. I love lifting weights. This is probably something I do probably 4 days a week. I enjoy that. It's just kind of an outlet for me. But yeah, I would say those are my my hobbies.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite Athletic Brewing beer?
Free Wave by I mean, there's other ones that some of the seasonal ones that come out and I go, man, that's good. But Free Wave's my staple. Like that is the one. If I had that from here on out, I would be good to go. And I'm starting to see it more and more locally here. And cold, right? There's the other thing. Like I can get it and it's in a refrigerator, so it's coming out cold, which is nice. Right? There were times you could get it and yeah, it was always in the back corner somewhere and it was warm. And so there was that process, but yeah, Free Wave. Oh, Soul Sour is also, if listen, I don't want to give Athletic any business advice, but if that doesn't become a staple, you're missing out. Oh, it's so good.
Oh man. Yeah. We are, I think it is coming out again soon, like earlier or multiple times a year. So, I mean, it's a very popular one. They nailed it with that one. And the cause is awesome. Last question, and I get you to go. On every can of beer, it says brew without compromise. But we believe, kind of like what the pursuit of the consequence of habit that you're on, you got to live without compromise. It takes not just one domino in your life to get rid of, one negative habit, but work on them all. So to pursue anything well, you got to live without compromise. What does it mean to you to live without compromise?
Oof, Mason, that's deep. I've heard you ask other people this, and I swear they have a canned answer. Like they'd prepared for this more than I have. I've said about change that a lot of my habits that I used to do compromise me from being this version of myself that I wanted to be. Right. So the word compromise has come up a lot for me. To live without compromise is to hold yourself to a certain standard, and then set up the environment to follow through on that. I want to be careful because I know personally I failed at that before, right? You hold yourself to a certain standard and maybe you don't reach it. But the without compromise part to me is that endless struggle of going towards it, knowing like, hey, this is where I want to be. And I'm going to F up. I'm going to mess it up sometimes. But at the end of the day, I do the next right thing to move forward towards that direction. And that's where, I don't know if not quitting is the living without compromise, but just continuing that grind with the acceptance of two things. It's going to suck sometimes, and you're not always gonna succeed, but just keep grinding towards that whatever that goal is.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Get ready, Ohio. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, is coming to the Buckeye State. And to kick things off, you can get started with $100 in free bets as an early sign-up bonus. Just download FanDuel's top-rated sportsbook app. Make every moment more with FanDuel. 21 plus and present in Ohio. Bonus issued and non-withdrawable free bets that expire 30 days after FanDuel accepts its first real money sports wager in Ohio. Go live date. Unique user identity verification required. Offer ends on the go live date. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.